May I request my speakers to come on the stage and take the seat? Audience are privileged today to listen to the industry leaders, that how we are doing business of information and how the information characteristic, scope, and content is changing in terms of acquisition, in terms of accuracy, and how that information is being delivered to the users across the organization or across the businesses. The first question I would like to ask to our first speaker, Mladen. Hexagon has just collaborated with Autodesk, ESRI, Airbus, DigitalGlobe, and some of these companies have been traditionally the competition of Hexagon, which actually makes me curious that how this content or information is driving the business strategy of Hexagon to make it more open-ended in terms of collaboration with the industry and serving the users what they need.
The world's not black and white, right? Just like an image isn't black and white. I think there's a lot of color. When we go to our, we ultimately listen to our customers, and when we go to our customer sites, certainly Esri has established the market leader role in GIS. If we look at CAD, you have the Autodesks, the Bentleys of the world. You won't have an organization that just has Intergraph software or Esri software or Bentley software or Autodesk software or Leica device or Topcon or Trimble or Faro. I think you have to be able to connect and have partnerships in order to ensure connectivity between these departments or between these information silos so you can ultimately get solutions to the end customer. And I think that's largely driven Hexagon's strategy in terms of collaboration. I think there's a lot of collaboration from being able to ingest content from multiple sources, whether they're spaceborne, airborne, terrestrial, and so forth, with the help of OGC and certain ISO standards, metadata standards. So we're all moving in the right direction.
Laurie would like to add on to this?
Sure. Well, Milan is exactly right, and we're very fortunate as a company, Esri, to be in strategic partnership with all the groups here on the stage and many of the groups up on the graphics on the wall. And we're particularly delighted to be expanding our strategic relationship with Hexagon as we speak. So this is very, very important. You gain strength by cooperating together, and this is a very, very dynamic time and important time. The other quick thing is content is fundamental to these systems, and so content comes in various different types, and some of it's quite expensive to get originally, but it's fantastic when you get it. The Digital Globe constellation of satellites is amazing. The new WorldView 3 satellites imagery is just gorgeous. It has an amazing amount of rich information contained in these SWIR bands, which is a gold mine for those of us who love imagery and are waiting to get our hands on it to get some information products out of it. So cooperation, collaboration, and making content and information products from groundbreaking content is very important.
How do you see the collaboration amongst the industry leaders for expanding the business pie, and how do you see that we can actually push forward the agenda of responsible education?
I obviously do believe that this is an industry in great need of expanding the pie. You know, whether it be the whole GIS industry or the imagery side of it, the software side of it, we just need to make it bigger. And the good part is, I think we are, and we are seeing examples of that. And I really think the way to do that is we on this stage and as service providers to the enterprise, both on actually government, public and private sector, but we have to partner with deep subject matter experts, like really deep subject matter experts. In other words, Digital Globe, I mean, we have 1,300 people, you know, 700+ million in revenue. Obviously, the U.S. government's a big client, international defense and intelligence, et cetera. But I don't have anybody within our 1,300 people that knows the ins and outs every single day of tight oil extraction in the oil and gas industry or pipeline monitoring in the midstream world. and we have got to find those people in the industry and partner service providers to those industries, whether it be, in that example, midstream or upstream, and educate them on what is possible with our imagery and our geospatial big data, and then partner with them to deliver a solution to those new users in new industries, creating new applications. So we can't do it alone. We've got to work with customers and service providers that are deep subject matter experts.
Thank you. Chris, when you look at your users and you go and talk to them, what are the tough questions they ask you?
So I think, well, there's a number of points. I think, and a couple of my colleagues here have already touched on one or two of them. But I think one of the key elements, and we talk about expanding the pie or the adjacencies, I think the critical piece to do that, which Bert touched on, is really having that domain expertise. When you're looking at how you really want to penetrate into the construction industry, the mining industry, utilities, etc., really what we bring is, we start off by bringing a capability to the industry. But then it's a matter of really understanding what are the workflows, what are the work processes they go through in their decision-making process, and how can we help them improve the efficiency of that decision-making process, or provide them information that's going to help them on the decision-making side of life. And I think so we try and get in there, and it's hard to always find domain experts, but get people in there to sit with the customers, to look at what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, what are the challenges they're facing, and then how can we help them solve some of those challenges. And in some cases, you're bringing concepts to the market that they haven't even thought about, opportunities to solve problems they didn't think were solvable maybe 3 years ago or 5 years ago. I think in terms of the questions they tend to ask us, again, it comes back to how can you demonstrate you're really going to get that return on investment? I'm going to spend X amount of money with you. How can you demonstrate I'm going to get that return? So it's a matter, on the conceptual side, is going through the trial process with them. Over time, you get the customer reference stories, and then it starts to become a snowball going downhill, that the market builds and builds and builds. And we've seen that in a number of areas, and hopefully we can identify new opportunities in new industries where collectively we can bring that geospatial capability to help transform a particular industry.
Thank you, Chris. Moving on to my next question, which is to Jay. How do you think that this democratization, which your company is trying to put forward through making your product affordable, is helping your business expand the business footprint?
Sure. So, the easy answer is the more accessible you make it, the larger the market opportunity. So from an internal company standpoint, that just expands the size of the pie. Every time we make a step forward on the ease of use, every time we make a step forward on the price point, opens up a much wider array of potential users. And we've seen that not just in the geospatial world, but in the metrology world, the industrial world. That's where we've made our living for years and years and years, by doing the exact same thing. Easy enough to use on the floor, small enough price point that anybody can afford it who needs to, whether it's the large manufacturers all the way down to the small 5- and 6-person machine shops, and we're trying to do the same thing over here as well. From our standpoint, the role we play today is all in delivering good points, delivering ease of documenting your space, your crime scene, your platform, whatever it is that you're working on. And then I would agree with what else has been said, though, that the continued collaboration of the other parties. Look, we are open source on the software side to any CAD package that's out there today. Yes, we have our own software that we sell that goes along with the scanner, but we're really just delivering good points. If somebody wants to use a direct feed of point cloud into Autodesk software, we let them do that. We're not going to force them to do something completely different.
Thank you very much. Well, now I'm taking some questions from the floor, and I have a question in my hand, the question is, how do you see the utility and application of 3D imaging and GIS technologies in multimedia and entertainment industry, especially virtual reality and gaming segment? And one is the utility aspect of it. Second is how do you make that affordable and portable with the 3D platforms?
Okay, I mean, I think if I play games, I like games. I mean, my first computer was a Commodore 64, and I'm kind of proud to say that some of the games on Commodore 64 are awesome. But in the gaming world, we get approached together with our partners to provide software. There's a big data problem there because for a lot of the world games, you know, the Warcraft and a lot of the games where you have to simulate different geographies around the world, they do like to have the most up-to-date representations of that geography. It has to be quick, it has to be portable, it has to be able to stream over the internet. Handling that big data, compression technology, streaming technology, being able to synthesize and fuse other types of content into that 3D scene, not just as a photo mesh or something that looks good, but have some intelligence behind the model so that you can actually go deeper into a building and really reflect a geography as accurately as possible. You need good rendering, you need good compression, you need good streaming. All of these technologies are coming from the geospatial industry. Thankfully, a lot of them were funded from the gaming industry because there's a lot of money there. And now we've seen the translation or the transition of that technology elsewhere. One partner of ours, Skyline, many of you probably use Skyline. Good friend Ronnie, the CTO of Skyline, he founded his business in Israel in the 90s. Guess where he started? Gaming. And you know, Skyline is a premier 3D visualization package comparable to Google Earth, at that time Keyhole, prior to the acquisition. I mean, top-notch technology, but they came from the gaming space. A lot of the technology we see in the market today in gaming came from a very specific need for visualizing large data sets very quickly, rendering those, collecting data sets, and ultimately producing very realistic 3D surfaces and 3D models so that that experience is very interactive and live.
Thank you.
And I would add to that if I could too. So we're seeing the same thing on the capture side. So, you know, for gaming, if you look at EA Sports, the current version of NCAA football, they had come to us to utilize laser scanners. They said, look, we want every single Division I college football stadium to be available at great level of detail. And the easiest answer for them was to literally go out and scan every single one of those stadiums so that you can be playing, whether you're in Ann Arbor or down in Tallahassee, it doesn't matter. When you select that you're playing Florida State in that game, it looks like you're in Florida State's stadium. And we're starting to see the same thing on the film side. We've had anywhere from scanners being used to recreate Coney Island, because the folks at Coney Island didn't want the director to blow it up. So they more rapidly created what Coney Island was for the film, all the way to, there's an ad running in the UK right now called Break Before the Bend, where it's kind of a cool ad actually for folks in this space. If you Google it, it's all about braking earlier before you go around the bend on a lot of these backcountry roads in the UK. They left the entire clip in full point cloud raw format. So really cool visualization and simulation still using the point cloud, another neat way to leverage it. So I think we're going to keep seeing more and more utilization of the data in similar ways.
What is the view of these companies with regard to investing into long-term business game for mapping those areas which are not yet mapped? Yep.
Yeah, so I'm relatively new to this space, 3 years, and I remember coming in 3 years ago saying, so there's not a global, seamless, color-balanced orthomosaic of the globe? I mean, how is that possible? I thought that's what Google Earth had. I thought that's what Digital Globe has. Turns out that's really difficult to do, a global, color-balanced, season-adjusted orthomosaic of the world. Digital Globe in the last 2 years has been investing an enormous amount of our product development in a product called Plus Vivid, which is an extension of our base map suite. And for the first time ever in the last few months, there is a color-balanced, seamless orthomosaic of Africa, the whole continent of Africa. And it's our called Africa Plus Vivid for us. And that is the foundation to create base maps of these undeveloped, unmapped parts of Africa. And so we're doing that right now in partnership with various GDOs like the World Bank and like the Gates Foundation and others. And then also using other resources or other tools like crowdsourcing and working. And this is something that has happened incredibly quickly. We're doing a few other things right now in partnership with other GDOs where we really could have, in a very short period of time, relatively short period of time, for the first time, a base map that is of Africa that is fully mapped in terms of roads, building footprints, land use, land cover, et cetera. And I envision that could be done in the next 12 to 18 months.
Thank you. How does geospatial industry communicate with the new users in various vertical industries who often don't have any geo background?
So I guess our view would be, again, if from our perspective, the role we play is delivering good points and making that simple and easy. The easiest way for me is to tell anybody who's not using the technology today is like, I want you to think of it as a 3D photo camera. That's all you're doing is instead of the flat pixels of a two-dimensional image, you've got a third dimension in there which is created by the point cloud and by the device itself. Everything in the world has 3 dimensions. You know, sheet of paper has 3 dimensions. It's just a matter of which ones are important. And so getting people to understand, oh yeah, okay, I get it. Everything has 3 dimensions to it. And there's an easy way to capture that, and it's not scary. You don't need to have a whole lot of training. If I sat the freestyle down on the table here, anybody in the room, whether you've experienced it or not, would figure out in about 30 seconds how to pick that thing up and use it. It is not rocket science, and that was our goal. The data itself may feel like rocket science, but collecting the data and making it into a form that's easy for anybody to use, that's the whole goal of democratization. And so, our view would just be, look, all you have to do is pick it up and try it. That's the easiest way to experience it and understand that it's not scary, that it's not hard to do what we're doing on the collection side.
Yeah, Chris?
I think when you look back over some of the technologies coming to the market, say in the last 10 years, and Mladen touched on it this morning as well on the agriculture market, and you look again on the construction market, in how over time you converted a farmer or a driver, an operator on a grader or dozer to suddenly adopt this technology, and how do you help them get over the hurdle of, I'm going away from reading the stakes to actually looking at this screen, and basically I've got 3 colors on my screen that tell me I'm either need to cut, fill, or I'm in grade, or on the etc. for a dozer driver. A lot of it's just an education process, and you're getting your early adopters on board, and as people start to see the benefits that are coming from the technology, then it starts, it starts to hit the mass market. And I think now, if you certainly in the US, if you go onto most construction sites, you're going to find 3D machine control on most of the machines, whether it's ours or Topcon's or Hexagon's on the machines. The adoption of that technology over the last 10 years and the penetration has been fairly dramatic in the Western world. And the same in precision farming. I think it is getting over that initial hurdle of the early adopters, getting people on board, and then it starts to, you get that snowball effect.
But
this is something I'm really passionate about, again, coming from outside the industry. But for us, we've taken out our marketing materials now does not say 30 centimeter shortwave infrared, hyperspectral, multispectral, off-nadir angle. I mean, we cannot talk in that language because that's not the language that our new customers in these new verticals developing new applications talk. We can say things like 3D, we can say things like the cloud and making your workflow much easier, etc. But we really it has to be a mindset shift for us. And for us as a company that's been around for 22 years, for me to try to tell our technical R&D engineers and our founder to not say those words I just mentioned earlier is really difficult. But the minute we do, and then we go have conversations and storytelling, as Lori said, with these new customers developing these new applications, is the minute the pie can get bigger.
Thank you. Lori, I have a question for you. You deal with a lot of data, and you talked about open data as well, and you talked about open platform. So there's a question which is from the floor, is that what are the barriers of bringing science to the data as a replacement to the traditional analysis paradigm? And what are the initiatives of your company with regard to helping this openness in data?
That's a very good question, whoever answered it. And it's something I feel very, very strongly about. In terms of barriers and eliminating barriers, the scientific barriers to broader adoption, I like to think of a couple of examples. One of my favorite sayings is, that something is truly arrived when it disappears. And I started thinking about that. Then there's what I think of as I'm going to call it the illusion of simplicity. Okay, and Sanjay, I think, has heard me say this before, but the best example I can think of is the car navigation system. You have something in your car, a navigation system that's elegantly simple. It knows where you are, you type in an address, and it just works. It just takes you there. If you get lost or if you don't follow directions, it'll growl at you for a minute, grumble, you know, recalculating, and then it'll take you there another way, right? What you don't see are 4 of the most complicated technologies ever invented in history that make that work. A constellation of orbiting satellites 20,000 miles up, communicating 1,000 times a second with each other, and through the atmosphere, which is an enormous physics problem in itself. You have the Earth turning, you have your car moving at a variable rate of speed, the satellites are moving, the car is traveling across a topologically structured vector road network, maybe built by Esri, and it's got a geodatabase attached to it with attributes for fire stations, gas stations, restaurants, and so forth. And then it's got advanced routing algorithms. Do you want to go the fastest distance? Do you want to go the shortest distance? But luckily, as a user, you're not confronted with any of that. It just works, all right? You get all these amazing benefits by hiding the complexity of the technology. So I'm absolutely optimistic that you can take enormously complicated technology, make it simple, and they will come. And this is absolutely doable. It's happening now. And I think this is the gateway to allowing this technology to become democratized, making it simple, making it disappear. Give me the benefits. Don't make me fight with the science.
Thank you. Milad, you want to add on to this?
Yeah, I mean, I like what the example. I think is a wonderful example. You know, just a different take on the question. Going back to Edward Tufte, you know, I keep looking at his books and his examples, and one of the things we're trying to do. I mean, we need, going back to the subject matter experts, we need the ability to understand the problem so that we can make sense with the use of this great, powerful technology. And I think, frankly, we've fallen short of that. But I think we have to be able to communicate and visualize and provide that information in a way that makes sense. We need, I mean, even who we recruit, I mean, we need information designers. We need people who know how to communicate information. We have a lot of technology. I don't think we have a technology problem. If anything, we probably got too much technology. We don't know how to communicate the results of all this great stuff to people so it makes sense to the forester, to the farmer, to the warfighter, to the urban planner, to the teacher, and so forth. We need better communication. We need to communicate better, and I think that's certainly a focus area of ours, and it starts with recruiting and hiring. You know, we're hiring, and we want to hire students who think differently, who don't want to be constrained by a map box, because a map box is static, it's square, it doesn't change, it doesn't reflect reality. So we want to be able to communicate information with the help of a map, but we're not constrained by a map. It's just one form of communicating information, but we need designers who know how to communicate information and the message that is personal and context specific, and I think that helps a lot in terms of simplicity and so forth.
All of you are doing business, and all of you are looking at expanding your business and expanding that business footprint. So let me ask you, give me 5 industries which you feel is going to be your priority areas.
I think one of our areas of our DNA, and this is a credit to our founder, Mr. Dangerman, is making a difference in global society, making people live longer, healthier lives, and focusing on concentrating, making the world a better place. There's no country in the world that's financially successful without a land registration system, all right? People cannot gain and build and have wealth without a land ownership system. So I think helping people own their own land and become self-sufficient and self-sustaining is an important area that we need to concentrate more on. Working on conservation environmental areas, helping basically reverse some of the negative effects of human-caused degradation in the environment, I think is a key thing. It's not necessarily something that you make a lot of profit with, but it's doing the right thing, and we're able to do that, and it's something that we have a large group of people committed to. We work with a lot of the folks up here in doing that. I would say other quick things that we would see happening are to, again, make the technology more dynamic and more real time. We're actually working on a number of initiatives right now to take in real time feeds and really scale this up. I think that you're going to see this massive amount of information coming in from drones and from microsatellites, picosatellites, wonderful big sats like Digital Globe. How do we harness all of that and in a real-time feed sense and be able to make information products from that very, very quickly? So scaling that up is something that we're really interested in.
I'll just build off what Lori just said. I think they're all great and valid and certainly important. Water. So I think water is a huge area that we have to look at and spend a lot of time assessing and building solutions and applications on water. Food, agriculture. And all these are interconnected, right? You don't have good water, your food suffers, right? So the food, agriculture, smart farming, smart agriculture, and so forth. Infrastructure, if you look at in the United States, a lot of old bridges, a lot of old roads. That's where we get the safety, security problems with safety. So I think infrastructure is critical, and not just maintaining infrastructure, but modernizing infrastructure so that around the world, either building it for the first time or maintaining infrastructure that's there. And I can keep going, just like Lori said. I think the last one is just people, us, educating. And I forget which of the speakers said it, but just the outreach, educating people with what's possible with this great technology and the types of information. I think we have to spend more time investing in people. If we don't educate people and keep people educated and sort of up to speed with what's possible, I think it doesn't really matter how good the technology is, because we are human beings and we are social, and if we can't convey, communicate, and use this technology for the greater good of mankind and civilization, then what's the point? So I think people is probably the last one.
Great. Bert?
Yeah, I'll give you first the IR answer. As a publicly traded company, we are focused on 7 named verticals from our perspective that have the biggest growth potential: U.S. government, our international defense and intelligence, international civil government, our energy sector, which includes upstream, downstream, midstream, and power, what we call LBS, the Googles, Microsofts, Apples, HEREs of the world, and then mining. And then lastly, what we call GDO, Global Development Organizations, or NGOs like the UN, World Bank, Gates Foundation, et cetera. From my so those are our 7 named verticals, but from my perspective, the 2 most exciting verticals for us, number 1 is GDO. We are actually, our largest growth segment percentage-wise in Q2 was GDO for us. And the projects that we are doing right now with the World Bank, with the UN, with Gates Foundation, the recent one we just signed with the World Resource Institute, WRI, Nature Conservancy. But the recent work that we just did with the Gates Foundation, which was Bill Gates discussed in Davos in January, about how the partnership between Gates and Digital Globe and working with Digital Globe was absolutely necessary to help eradicate polio in Nigeria. And he talked about the details of that, and we just signed a new agreement with the Gates Foundation to help eradicate polio in Pakistan and Afghanistan, which are the 2 countries left. And again, it's an exciting for us because we are helping to see a better world, and it's exciting for us because it's also a growth segment for our shareholders. The second one I'll touch on real quickly is a vertical that we haven't seen a lot of growth in, but long term I'm really bullish because of our geospatial big data success we've had this year. But it is traditional information companies like Bloomberg, like Thomson, who's here, like IHS, FactSet, Nielsen, Verisk. These information companies have historically not used geospatial type information to help deliver new products to their customers. And for the first time this year, we've signed a handful of the ones I just mentioned to co-develop products using our geospatial big data to help develop new products for predicting economic growth in the CPG sector, for consumer packaged goods, et cetera, helping the insurance industry. So again, partnering with these deep subject matter expert information companies to get into new verticals. But the information sector is really exciting for us.
Excellent. Jay?
Yeah, so mine are very, very straightforward. Architecture, engineering, and construction is number 1. It's our biggest segment in this space today, and no doubt will continue to grow, and I suspect will be our biggest one for quite a long period of time. Law enforcement and forensics is actually number 2. It is a smaller niche industry for sure, but there is a real transformation starting there in the utilization of three-dimensional data that we're seeing every single day. And that industry, one thing I will say is that they talk to each other much more readily and rapidly than any other industry I've seen. And so the spread of wealth of information is going more rapidly than I've seen from an adoption standpoint in some of the others. The third one is building information modeling. No doubt we are already starting to see a pickup there, and we'll continue to see pickup. The fourth one, which was alluded to before, infrastructure, which for us includes heritage for preservation. And then the fifth one, which I think over the long term potentially is the biggest, is insurance. We have done a lot of time and spent a lot of effort studying and understanding it. There's no question they are technology laggards from an adoption standpoint, but we are within shooting distance of having, pick your asset. Hartford Steam Boiler scans your facility before they write the policy, and they're using the data then if there's ever an event. And seeing an insurance agent show up with their handheld scanner to collect data after a vehicle accident or a vehicle crash. The law enforcement side, we are already starting to see point cloud data readily accepted in the courtroom as being a fundamental driver of proving guilt or innocence, and the second you see that momentum build, that's when the insurance companies will start getting more and more interested, and the insurance spreads across all four of those other major target verticals for us that I mentioned.
Thank you, Jay.
So I think from a Trimble perspective, first is the construction market, whether that's basic covering the whole AEC piece, but again, that's been a significant part of the Trimble business over the last 10 to 15 years. Agriculture is another big market for Trimble, and the third one being transport and logistics. Then actually the fourth one is the geospatial capability that goes into what I'd say is still the GIS survey professionals is still another huge revenue and margin contributor to Trimble. I think when you start looking at other ones for the future we focus on probably another 10 or 15 industries, and I'll be interested to see if any of those can migrate to the size and scale that we see out of construction, out of agriculture. So those other ones we look at can be mining, can be rail, it's land management, can be utilities, whether that's electric or going into water. So there's multiple other opportunities out there, I think, where our anticipation is we can see significant growth in the future.
And my understanding of the session is definitely we are all in the business of information. We are not in the business of maps anymore. One more common thing which I felt was coming up was that we are the people and the world and the global development organizations are the people who are trying to do the empowerment of the people and providing the basic amenities around the world is also on the priority of the geospatial industry. With this thought, I would like to close this panel. Thank you very much to our panelists.